everybody. Welcome to our weekly webinar. The noonday gun has just gone off in our Cape Town studio, and we're thrilled to kick off yet another insightful webinar session. I'm Neil Peterson. I'm the founder and content-in-chief of Real Estate Investor, South Africa's premier real estate news, content, and education platform since 2007. And at REI, we're immensely passionate about serving the South African real estate investor and the South African real estate and business community through our online digital platform, rei.co.za, our monthly digital magazine, Real Estate Investor Mag, and REI's virtual webinars and our in-person seminars and conferences. And today I have the pleasure of serving as your host and moderator for our investment webinar. And we're really thrilled to have you join us for this insightful session. And today's topic is Unlocking Profit, Mastering Residential Investment in South Africa's Booming Market. Yes, it is a booming market, and it will be a booming market. We'll talk about that and unpack that a little bit. Before I introduce you, though, our esteemed panelists and delve into our discussion, let's do some housekeeping first. So I extend a warm invitation to all of you to actively engage with us during the webinar. It's very important to ask questions. It is a learning experience, and your participation certainly enriches our dialogue. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have for our panelists, and please utilize the designated Q&A box located on the bottom of your screen, not the chat box, which is reserved for general comments. And we welcome any ideas. There are any topics going forward as well in that general box as well. So rest assured, all your questions will be addressed both during the Q&A panel and discussion in our final session. Recordings of today's webinar will be accessible post-event, and you get it via email if you have registered. And for those who have not registered, the webinar recordings are accessible on the rei.co.za website under events on the homepage. So let's move on to the heart of today's webinar, Unlocking Profit and Mastering Residential Investment in South Africa's Booming Market. This, I might say, is a prelude that sets the stage for the Reside Summit and Awards and InvestorCon. It takes place from Tuesday, the 16th of July to Friday, the 19th of July. It's live at Sandton Convention Center in Johannesburg. It's only 3 weeks away. So first up, I would like to introduce you to Debbie Tag. She's the chairperson of the 2024 Reside Summit. And she would like to share some info on the upcoming summit and more specifically the InvestorCon. So over to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Neil, for inviting me for, I think this is our third webinar in Prelude, building up the excitement. Being on the receiving end of all the communications, we are inundated with requests, so that's very exciting. So please do go onto the website. I think specifically in the context of today's webinar, we're giving you a foretaste of three amazing thought leaders, and hopefully also prelude to the vision around the InvestorCon that is part of Reside Summit. Really looking at practical, who's done this, sharing warts and all stories. So it's very masterclass driven. So InvestorCon is chaired by Miguel, so obviously is one of the keynote speakers today. And as you will also notice, if you go and look specifically at the InvestorCon Summit on the Reside website, it runs in the evenings because, as we know, either this is your full-time job or a lot of people are sort of investing and diversifying the income stream, which is what you're going to talk to a bit today. So we're hoping that by virtue of what you can learn at the masterclasses and the networking, actually, which is even just as important, that you can maybe stop that full-time job and this becomes how you make your millions. So please, again, thank you, Neil and partners. If you see there's a very special rates as well if you attend. So there's a lot on offer, whether you are coming in very new to property investment or whether you are a big developer. So this is the largest event of its size. It's also, I think, the first time where you literally have every moving part of the industry together. So you cannot say there's not anyone for anything for anybody. And I hope to meet you all there in person and enjoy the webinar. As I said, a foretaste of what's to come. And I think you're going to enjoy the passion of our three keynote speakers. And yeah, back over to you, Neil, as moderator. See you all in
Thanks very
not
much,
quite 3
Debbie.
weeks. It's 2.5. So see you all in 2.5
Okay,
weeks.
2.5. You're counting the sleeps there, Debbie.
Sleep? Who gets to sleep now? Awesome. See you all then. Bye.
Okay, great. Thanks, Debbie. All right, so wonderful. So it's a great opportunity, I think, to take this whole conversation live. And it's really going to be an awesome 4 days. It's 4 days, and it's really an extravaganza. So if you're in the property game, this is the place to be. So yes, onto our webinar topic today. We're going to explore buy-to-let mastery, student accommodation strategies, Airbnb profits, and also discover expert insights on building profitable portfolios, building wealth, and also capitalizing on evolving markets. So without further ado, please let me introduce you to our esteemed guest panelists today. First up is Robin Booth. He's a serial entrepreneur, international speaker, real estate investor, coach, award-winning stage shared with A-listers. He's an expert in property, business automation, and financial freedom. Welcome to you, Robin. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, Neil, great, and great to be here. You actually just said a whole lot of stuff there that I was playing in my mind. Okay, what part should I start with? How should I share it? So let me jump straight in, which is I actually kind of fell into property investing many, many years ago, 2 decades ago. And the real passion was because I wanted to create the life that I love to live. I'm an adventurer at heart. I want to travel a lot. I want to afford things that I really appreciate. I want to spend time with family. And I had to figure out how to do that. And I wasn't cut out just to go and be an employee and work my way up a certain ladder and somehow get caught into what we call the rat race. And when I say I fell into the property, it was, well, how could I use certain tools out there, business or property, that will fuel and allow me to create the life I love to live? So, of course, I had to try all the different property strategies that we know to figure out which are going to give me the best profits, right? I love today's conversation, unlocking profits, because that's what I'm passionate about. So I've got student housing, I have multi-lets, I have vacant land, we've got a big development coming up. I've done the back-to-back flips, and none other than the Airbnb model, which is the one which has produced the most returns in the easiest way, helps with automation, which I'm really strong at. So I can scale and be around the world and really appreciate and create the life I love to live. So I'm really vouching today, even though I've got all the other property strategies, my maximum profits are definitely coming from Airbnb, especially because there's some properties I don't have to own. I can rent from a landlord and sublet on Airbnb, rental arbitrage. And out of that, I can get into property investing and generate capital and profits from literally the first week without a whole lot of money down. And that, for me, transforms how we do property investing.
Wonderful. So it's great having you on, Robin, and I think we'd like to hear a lot more about those strategies. We're going to delve into them. Our second guest is property investor, developer, author, speaker, podcast, content creator. Welcome, Witness. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience? Witness Ndaka.
Thank you, Neil, for that quick introduction. Hi to everyone who's listening. My name is Witness Mdaka, as you just said. I'm the author of a book called It's More Than Just Money, a guide to escaping the rat race and building generational wealth. Now, I must say, I did really introduced to real estate because my mother in the year 2008 discovered that she overpaid her house by 150,000 rands. And as soon as she got that money, she used that money to build back rooms at home and said that I should look after those back rooms if I want to go to university. So basically, I was seeing real estate not even as a business, but as something that is basically taking the money, paying school fees and all of that. I eventually did graduate with a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from Midrand Graduate Institute. Then I worked as a marketing guy, campaign manager for like 14 months. But after that, I realized that I wasn't really a marketing guy. I didn't like the job that I was in, though I was promoted 4 times in 14 months in the same job. Then went back to the drawing board. I then started a construction company, which then later turned into a property investing company, going back to the basics of what I had been introduced to in 2008. Then I guess then what might have been seen as me accidentally being introduced into the market now turned into a passion and a business for property. Then in 2020, realizing that a lot of people, tenants, our tenants were moving out, and we had people that were asking me questions about investing in property. I then started to write the book, It's More Than Just Money, which turned into a successful YouTube channel, which also turned into a movement across the country. I've helped thousands of people invest in property through sharing knowledge. I've done seminars across the country. I did 18 cities last year. It was a bit of a busy year, just engaging with people on the ground, helping them invest in property, start businesses. We are in the Airbnb space as well, because after 2020, we realized that some of our units can be converted into an Airbnb business. So then we then started another business, which was renting from our main business, which was the property business, and subletting through Airbnb, and we had somebody manage that for us. And then I started a prop tech company with a group of tech enthusiasts, which are now, we're about to launch actually a property management system that helps property managers look after their properties and scale their businesses. And then what am I forgetting? I've got a consulting business, which is mainly on business and entrepreneurship. I do masterclasses on entrepreneurship and finance. And yeah, this is me. I'm here, and I'm looking forward to sharing value and engaging with everybody that's here.
Wonderful. Great having you on the show today, Witness. And I think you're a busy guy, hey? Shoot.
Thank you so
Which is
much.
wonderful to hear. Great. Our third guest is Miguel Martins. He's an ex-banker. I won't tell you which bank it is, other to tell you that it's red. Work it out for yourself. He's a 25-year-old property investor. He's an innovator and finance solution advisor, independent market analyst, and he's dedicated to empowering property investors. Welcome, Miguel. Do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, Neil. Hi, everyone. Like I said, I'm a 25-year-old property investor. I wish I was 25 with the knowledge that I know now. There are a couple of things I might do differently and be a lot further than I am today. But yeah, no, thanks for inviting us on today. It's amazing to be alongside the likes of Robin and Witness. I think what we have on your webinar today is a massive amount of experience, of knowledge. If anyone's seen it, done it, I think Robin and Witness have. I mean, what I can do in terms of matching that is I come from corporate. So I spent the last 25 years at Absa Bank in various roles. The last 7 years heading up the investor portfolio at home loans. So I have a good understanding of mortgage finance. And I was able to match my passion for property investment with my job. So I really, really enjoyed my job over the last 7 years. About 2 years ago, I decided it was time to step out of corporate to go and test myself in the small business entrepreneur world. And since then, it's been a hell of a ride the last 2 years. Really just leveraging the property investments that I've had. Started building a short-term rental Airbnb portfolio, and now looking to scale that up. So the test is done. Now we're scaling that up. Continue to have the long-term rental portfolios, and amongst other property strategies that I've employed, flipping, etc. So really a good amount of knowledge, and of course business groups. Recently started business networking groups. And what's been really great about that, which is slightly outside property, is that it really broadens the mind. But it's the same principles. Wherever you go in business, it's the same principles. We just really enjoy applying those principles in the property space.
Great. Well, it's wonderful having you here, Miguel. And I know you facilitating and driving the whole InvestorCon, which is going to happen on the 16th and 17th in Johannesburg. So we look forward to that as well, along with both Witness and Robin that's going to be there. So guys, let's get the discussion going. I think I'm really excited, and I'm sure the audience is also, just in terms of, you all got very diverse and very unique different strategies, but it's kind of, somebody's now going to be sitting outside on the back and say, well, which way do I go? What is the strategy that I employ? So Robert, let's start off with you. I know that you mostly of recent times been more in the sort of Airbnb area. So maybe you can share what strategy and approaches do you employ for property investment? What is the criteria that you use to prioritize when you're selecting investment properties? And maybe how has your strategy evolved over time?
So let's just actually step back, Neil, and take a look that all three of us who've introduced ourselves have one thing in common besides being on this webinar today, and that is we have Airbnb. So that should immediately tell something about, this is a strategy maybe we should look into. Now, what Witness said, which I really liked, is he also owns the assets in the parent company and then rents it to a different business and can generate that way. So he's merging both the traditional value of owning an asset and then a business which can control the cash flow as the rental and the tenant as such. And I think for me, that's what Airbnb has really introduced. And in South Africa, especially, you really had to work hard to generate a lot of money in property. You had to have the expertise, the skills, always a bit of luck with our exchange rates and all the turmoil, political stuff we've got. But at the end of the day, you needed education and you needed to be in the right place, the right time, and to make it work. And what we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years is a revolution which has been disrupted by Uber, Airbnb, and a whole, even Netflix, where people are reinventing the traditional norms out there. And I think the investing in Airbnb allows us to bridge the traditional, which is I can still buy a property and put it on Airbnb, or I can also rent a property from a landlord and sublet it in rental arbitrage and control the cash flow. And I think that just is super exciting, because what that does is it opens up property investing to people who don't have very high affordability to buy 4 or 5 million rand properties to put on Airbnb, or don't have a lot of money to even put down their initial deposit or to buy it cash. Literally, we're seeing people starting off their property investing journey with 1 month's rental, paying to the landlord, and 1 month's deposit, which gets them going, and they can actually start, because you can actually rent an apartment that's already got furniture in it. So you're listing it on Airbnb and obviously then making money off that. Now, we could go and say, well, do we have to have a lot of insights and skills? Yes, we want to have the information and knowledge, but you don't have to have years. You don't even have to have months. You could do courses that are out there in a weekend, and that will set you up to even generating and unlocking profits within your first month, which is, I don't know any other business where you can get that going with so little and really making the difference. And I think that's so much about what we're going to be talking about at Reside, and especially not just people like me who've been in this for 5 to 10 years, but people who've started just 6 months ago. I know that at the conference we've got there are people who are going to be sharing their stories as recently as that and are generating profits. And some of them actually have stepped out of corporate, like Miguel has said, to now follow this and to make it work. And I think, when you talk about, the kind of skill sets that we're wanting to know, there's so much out there on the internet. Go and Google YouTube and Airbnb, and you're going to find a barrage of, you should do this, you should do that. What we're not finding is, what do you do in South Africa? How do we make South Africa work with the Airbnb model? What are the South African guests? How do they choose a property? What should we put in our property? How should we advertise it? All those kinds of things is what is unique to our country here. And that's why it's so special for us at Reside to be able to share that with everyone, so that they can actually go away from that conference and say, I'm ready, I can get going on this and make it happen. And I think that's something which is unique. You don't have to spend the next year training to become a property investor. It's something you can actually get going on incredibly quickly. And I think that's, for me, the most exciting part, because I've seen people who I'm sure are sitting here watching this start, and within such a short amount of time have that confidence to grow and to make it happen. And that's why I'm dedicating a lot of my own time and energy into that. I love that I can buy and rent out penthouses and beautiful on the beach properties, and they cash flow positive from day one. Even the purchase, like in Cape Town, where can you buy a luxury property and have it cash flowing positive with 100% finance? There's no other business I know that can do that. And that's why this is really working. Of course, you need to know what you're doing. So that's why we're going to be speaking and sharing those insights, which is exactly why we're wanting people to come, because you're not going to get this anywhere else. This is something that's really unique. And it's just, I love seeing all types of people making this work for them. And of course, this is anywhere in South Africa. It's not, Cape Town is just the tourist hub. Not at all. Miguel has his Airbnbs in Sandton, some of his portfolio, we might add, because he's also got a whole lot in Cape Town as well. And he's just applied the same skills, techniques, and he's making it work. So I'm looking forward to I'm hoping we're going to have some banter today about people who are going to say to me, yeah, but Airbnb, there's damage. And I've got an answer for that. And, oh, yeah, but Airbnb, I don't know anything about marketing. Well, you don't have to, because Airbnb does all that for you. So I'm looking to see if we can get some questions from some of our attendees who can try and poke holes in this, because I think it's such a great model, and I'm very willing to take on any question or challenge that someone throws my way.
Awesome. Great. I like the approach there, Robin. I think it's very practical, action orientated, which I think is needed. We got to simplify the process, make it a lot easier to invest, and give people access to investment. So great approach. I love it. Witness, to you, maybe you just talk a little bit about the strategy approach that you use. I mean, I know we sort of moving into Airbnb because the three of you are playing in that sector. So maybe just how has your strategy evolved from where you initially started, but maybe to where you are today, and your philosophy. Okay, you just on mute there, Witness. You just have to unmute yourself. Yeah, a lot of us do forget that from time. No problem. All good.
I forgot. They really slipped my mind. So for me, the biggest thing for me is cash flow, right? The main reason why we ended up doing the Airbnb in any case was to find ways to maximize our cash flow for our existing properties, and eventually also start renting out other people's properties. But I basically want to say, when I started my business, the main focus was township property, right? And back then, when my mother built her back rooms, there wasn't any need or focus on making sure that all those units have got proper amenities, like not even a toilet would you have in those. Right now, it's a norm, or that when people build units, they would make it more like a studio apartment. So I had been in Cape Town for honeymoon, and I was staying in a studio apartment in Cape Town. And a thought came to me that I've got all these back rooms in the township, and none of them look like this, but this is actually a back room. A studio apartment, when you look at it, it's just one room with a kitchen and a toilet. And I thought to myself, when I go back home, I'm going to build units in the townships that have proper amenities. And my target was young professionals. And when I had the rooms at home, rental was about 1,000 at most that you can get. And as soon as I built my first 12 studio apartments at the time, the rental that I charged, I couldn't believe it. People were willing to pay me 3,000, 3,500 rents. Now it's a norm for people to pay 3,000 for a room, a 20 square meter room, a 19 square meter room. Back then, it wasn't as much of a norm as it is right now. Then when I realized that the township market is getting saturated because more people are seeing what's going on and they're starting to build back rooms, I then moved into old white suburbs. That became my strategy, to say, if I go to an area where it used to be a predominantly white suburb where white people are moving out, I'll find houses that are big, which means the renovations and the cutting up of studio apartments on those houses would be immediate. So I would buy the house and start cutting it up and creating multiple units. And of course, when I started, I didn't know I had to rezone these houses, right? But now it's different. We apply for rezoning and we do what we need to do. So on one house that where ideally, if you buy it for 1.3 million, you'd get 13,000 rents rental. Because it's big, would have 13, 14 units, our income there would be about 40,000 rents, right? And then I realized as time goes on that even those can each of them be turned into Airbnb units. Although I wouldn't be able to charge as much as I can with a 2-bedroom apartment, I can charge every one of those rooms individually, and I can have a lodge without actually applying for it to be a lodge. I don't have to rezone it into a lodge. I can just operate it as an Airbnb. And that became the biggest focus in terms of being able to unlock cash flow. So when I get into any property deal, I want to get into it to buy the money. Basically, I want to buy the money. I'm not buying the property. So before I even assess the deal or look at it, I want to know how much money can we unlock from the property. So it's more value-based, more than anything when it comes to the residential property. So our market still is young professionals. We need to be able to get the people that are earning around 22,000 rands and below 15,000. Those are the people that usually go for our units. And then I also looked at the fact that over time, there had been a time where I was building this fund where I was going to be developing all these units. Then realized over time that this is going to be administration heavy for me. I realized that I personally do not like management of property, but I love property. I love the deals. Then I thought to myself, what is the best way to get involved in the deals without necessarily doing the everyday nitty-gritties? Then I started to partner with other people that love management. So I would look for other developers that are developing property, be it in Gauteng, be it in Limpopo. One of my business partners is doing work in Limpopo. And those are the guys that I would say, let me come in as a partner. This is the amount of money I'm willing to put in. You do the management of those units. You do the runarounds. And I just look at the fact that are we managing it in a form of a strategy at a high level. So on the residential level, for me, it's mostly about the cash flow more than anything.
I think that's such a critical point. And, because, you're saying right from day dot, you want to start making money. And I think there's too many investments out there that people get stuck into, and they're making a loss. And I think Witness is such an important strategy. Very interesting how you've evolved. The backyarding is a whole discussion by itself. I think a very, very successful strategy. I know a lot of investors doing really well there. So over to you, Miguel. Now, Miguel, same thing. I mean, you've also you've been in the business 25 years now. So you started off, I'm sure, with the traditional buy-to-lets, and you've been based in Johannesburg, had a very specific strategy. You've also moved into Airbnb, like all the rest of the guys, which is fantastic. So maybe just share how you've actually evolved and what is the criteria that you employ now for your investment strategies.
No, great, Neil. And I think, so just picking up from a couple of comments Robin and Witness made, I think one thing other than Airbnb that is common amongst all of us is diversification. We've got diverse portfolios, diverse strategies. And although there's a particular focus on one strategy or the other, it's about that diversification and about chasing a yield that I think is quite interesting. And Witness, I loved your comment around, I'm not buying a property, I'm buying the money, I'm buying the cash flow. That's it, right? We don't, the property is just a vehicle, but ultimately it's how we leveraging that vehicle that actually takes us where we need to be. So Neil, yes. So I was a graduate. I was in the graduate program at ABSA when I bought my first sectional title, and since then, just been slowly building a portfolio of residential properties over the years, and a strategy I applied then was really a low management strategy. Properties needed to be between the office and where I lived, because if I had viewings, if I had DIY, if I had to meet someone on site, I couldn't be traveling all over the place, and because I was focusing on my job. So I had a particular strategy that really kind of was built around where I live, really. So fairly limiting in that sense, because the focus was the job. During that time, mainly by rentals, as you spoke about, and Airbnb really has taken off in South Africa in a big way, probably in the last 3 or 4 years. It's really come to the fore. It's been on for a long time, about 10 years, I think, in itself. But here, really, more and more people have taken it on. And I think what I took it on because I left my corporate job. I needed my properties to yield increased rentals or increased income. And I started where I was, as you do, as an entrepreneur. One of the rules is start with what you have. And I converted a multi-let that I had into a lodge, actually very similar to what Witness was speaking about. And now I've got a lodge or a property with 7 apartments on the property, Airbnb apartments. Where I've gone slightly different to Robin is I'm focusing on the mid-tier, the affordable, call it Airbnbs, and I've got 3 properties with each with 7, 3, and 6 suites on each. So I focus where I can, as opposed to having one here, one there. I'm going for that leverage of having multiple apartments and getting the economies of scale in terms of costs, etc. So slightly different approach, but I'm already looking at it, and in a year and a half down the line in the strategy, looking at, well, where to next? What's the adjustment? Because you learn a couple of things and you realize what works, what doesn't work. What does the next phase look like? I love the fact that I've got my rental properties and I've got a balance sheet there. Half my Airbnb portfolio is through rental arbitrage, so it's a cash flow strategy. So that's driving income. Our rental properties obviously doing an income as well, but that's growing a balance sheet as such, and it just really come to that diversity of strategies.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got three very diverse type of investors here, but one thing common is Airbnb. So let's hone in a little bit on Airbnb. Now, Robin, we'd love to challenge everything you say. We just don't have the time to really, because this debate might carry on till 6 o'clock tonight. But we'll leave that open. We'll give a bash. And certainly we've got the opportunity for the guests here. As I mentioned right at the start, there's a 50% discount to go to the InvestorCon. It's on Tuesday the 16th and Wednesday the 17th at Sandton Convention Center. It's 50% off. We encourage you to come along. Join us also for the Reside Summit and for the OriTech event. So coming back to you, Robin, let's talk about Airbnb. I know you've opened up a little bit in terms of what it is, but let's look at more of the essential factors to consider when you price a property and properties that you look for. You mentioned obviously rent-to-rent type of strategy, but also how do you handle, so let's talk about pricing. How do you start pricing it, and what are the properties you look for when you rent-to-rent kind of where you want to rent out again? And then secondly, regulatory challenges and that kind of stuff, and local laws affecting short-term. How do you deal with those?
Great, Neil, and thanks for giving me the remaining 25 minutes to answer all of those questions for today. It's actually, I'll be quick on them. I promise around that. So, doing Airbnb is actually very similar to if you're just doing a normal buy-to-let. There are programs, software, websites that you can, just like CMA or Lightstone, you can enter in a property's address and it will tell you by scraping all the Airbnb listings in the area, and will say, well, you've got the same kind of property as this one next door. It has proven to generate this amount of annual income with this occupancy rate, and therefore we predict that this one that you're looking at will produce the same. So that gives us a real solid foundation on what that rental or that income could be. And of course, then you can actually go onto Airbnb, look at the surrounding listings of the area that you're interested in and see if it's valid. Well, this program is telling me that I can charge 1,500 Rand a night. And yes, actually, all the other ones around this unit are also all about 1.5. So there's some legitimacy to that. So I think that's the first thing, is we understand that. Now, the biggest failure that people make in Airbnb is because you're generating money so quickly and unlocking such profits, you get greedy. And it's the greed that kills the investor, because you start to feel you're entitled to raise your prices, and you're entitled because how else are you suddenly getting all this money so quickly without even being an expert, but you're generating? Then you start thinking, well, if it was that easy, man, I should have put my pricing higher. So you put it higher, and then you upmarket yourself, because the beautiful thing about Airbnb is it's totally responsive. If you put your pricing too high, you're not going to get bookings. So if you want to adjust your occupancy level, change your pricing, and you'll literally, within hours, you'll see the market respond straight away. People will book you. So that's what I like about it. It's not rocket science. You just need to tune in and keep your ego in check. Otherwise, you will get a bit stuck on that. In looking for property, I love automation, because, in this webinar, I'm out in the Baviaansbush. I'm in the Karoo. As soon as I click, shut off this computer, we're in the mountains for the next 4 days, and we're out of cell phone reception. All of my Airbnbs are going to be working. They're all automated. They're all working fantastically well, earning me income while I'm living the life I love to live. But I have to have automation. So first and foremost, my guests need to be able to get into these properties without me having to be there to hand over the key. So when I look at a property, I ask, can I automate this check-in? It's a little bit more difficult with body corporates and buildings that have access codes, but it's possible. But that's the first thing. If I can't do it, I walk away, because I'm not going to go and pay someone 800 Rand or something just to hand over a key, and I'm certainly not going to do it. So automation is absolutely essential. And the last thing is, you mentioned about, like restrictions or policies around, like, do you have to rezone? No, you don't. But if you are going to rent or buy in a building, you need to check those body corporate rules. Does that building allow you? Does the body corporate rules allow for you to sublet on Airbnb? And that is growing. I mean, we can see so much around the world about cities. I mean, New York did it just recently. Florence is doing it in Italy, where they're saying, listen, we need to put some kind of restrictions in, because everyone is jumping onto the bandwagon. Everyone wants to have their own Airbnb, that it's driving out the people who want to live in those areas. And of course, it's driving the rental prices up. Understandable. But here in South Africa, certainly, in most places, that's not going to happen for a long while, because it's such a pivotal part of the South African economy is what's happening at the moment. So I think the main thing is make sure if you're in a building that you can actually do it from there. And then that's the one that is the most important. And as you've heard, both Miguel and Witness share that, there's no regulation that says you cannot run an Airbnb in this place. The municipalities are more leaving it up to the buildings to decide if they can and do it or not. And all these kinds of questions, this is exactly why we want people to come to, our masterclasses and to reside, because here's the opportunity to speak to us and to hear directly from the horse's mouth, and from other people who have made it work. I always say proof is in the results. It's right there. You can't deny how people are making it work.
No, absolutely. No, I think just wonderful approach there again, Robin. Witness, your side, the student accommodation. Let's open a little bit more about that, because that's also something you're employing at the moment. What are the key differences in that investment strategy than traditional rental properties and student accommodation, and what are you doing to sort of adapt the properties to meet specific needs and preferences of students? Maybe you can share us in terms of your experiences on that. Once again, you just have to switch on the audio. Not
Sorry
a problem
about
with
that. So thank you for that question, but I don't have much. I wouldn't say I've got a lot of experience when it comes to student accommodation, because I personally do not play in that space much. I think Robin did mention that he is doing some sort of student accommodation when he started. You might have confused us. But I just want to add a bit more on what he said when it comes to the Airbnb, because on another thing is that we also have like office spaces where we are playing in, which is obviously not the main discussion for today, because that's more commercial than residential. But I want to say something, agreeing with Robin on what he has mentioned when it comes to the Airbnb. To say for us, one of the strategies we stumbled upon was to realize that we had a lot of business travelers rather than people who were looking for leisure, right? Simply because when we started our Airbnbs, before we even started, somebody came, rented one of our apartments, which is closer to the airport. And during COVID, they were operating their Airbnb during COVID. And it was because people were traveling more for work purposes, the essential workers, right? And then after a while, the person had to relocate and they had to leave that apartment. But then I said to my team, but here's an opportunity for us to try out this Airbnb thing. In fact, that apartment belongs to us. So we paid the person for the furniture, they moved, and then realized that our core people when it comes to this Airbnb business is literally people that are traveling from different places for work purposes rather than just for leisure. We didn't have people saying, hey, I want to come chill, or hey, I want to come have a party, or hey, I want to come host some people. It was mostly people that are traveling. So I would say it's important to determine the strategy in terms of whether or not you're targeting people that are looking for leisure, people that are going on holiday, or literally your focus is going to be people that are actually traveling for work-related purposes, or it might also be people that are traveling for conferences, like now the conference that we're having from the 16th and 17th of June. There might be someone traveling from a specific place and wanting to be closer to where the conference is. One has to identify that, going back to location, and knowing where to actually put their Airbnb to be able to maximize and take care of that client. Lastly, there's this one interesting fellow with one of our Airbnbs, right? A different market altogether. Every Thursday, that fellow books the Airbnb. He now books directly with us. So we know that there is a certain kind of market of people that want to spend time with their girlfriends on certain days. Now, whether or not that is right or wrong, it's a completely different story. The fact of the matter is we've got a clientele of someone who wants to spend time with their girlfriend every other day. So that's something to look at as well.
Well, I love the way that you actually put the different niches in property, and it seemed that you got it all covered there, Witness. So I'm just going to come through to Miguel again, and so Miguel, maybe just let's talk a little bit about the buy to let. You know, what is the criteria that you use to identify high yield? Because you use the word yielding properties in the current South African market, and secondly, I think more importantly, how do you mitigate risks associated with tenant selection and management in your portfolios? It's quite a big thing. I mean, we're still in a very high interest rate cycle, and obviously we also in a very high inflationary cycle. We hope that next month that Reserve Bank is going to, you know, drop interest rates. My feeling is they are, because it's the big elephant in the room at the moment, certainly. Yeah. But yeah, so maybe just give us some insight on that.
You know, like maybe leading from Witness, it's important to know what your customer wants, right? Whether you know, and what their needs are, whether it's buy to let, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's student accommodation, right? At the end of the day, we're selling a product, yeah. and our product is you know, it's a space, and that space must do certain things. It must be secure, it must be clean, you know, must be comfortable, it must be welcoming, etc. And often, you know, those curtains need to close nice and tightly, right? So it's all about that, you know. Look, buy to let, I think it was the perfect strategy for me when I was building a portfolio. I had a pay slip, so I could lend from the bank, and I could build a balance sheet. You know, again, got to do the numbers, got to get educated. I think one thing that, you know, I think we do need to mention is that these things are all doable, but they'll come with risk. And the antidote to risk is education. Go and read, go in the courses, invest in the courses. Often meet people who are worried about spending 10,000 Rand on a course, but they're happy to go and put down 50,000 Rand on attorney's fees, not even the deposit, attorney's fees on a 1 million Rand house property, and they call it investing. That's called speculating. So we've all going to learn to, we've all going to apply it ourselves. We're going to invest it in learning, and actually also networking with other investors, because there's the book gives you the theory, the course tells you how to apply the theory, and then you know, other investors on a call, on a WhatsApp group around the table, they'll tell you what was wrong with the theory to begin with and how to fix the problem you're having today. So really, that it's about building it up around you. My rents portfolio, very comfortable with it. It's doing well. I actually went and looked at the last TPN reports that came out in Q1 this year, and it shows that the vacancy rate in South Africa is down to 4%. I wrote it down, 4.4%. I mean, it hasn't been that low since 2016. 4.4%. So of TPN's landlords, they report that 4% of their properties were empty, and that came down, I think, from 12-15% over the last couple of years. What that talks to is that the demand exceeds the supply, so it's a great time to be in the rental market. Of course, interest rates are a killer, and I really am hoping for a 0.25% or even a 0.5% drop next week. It's possible. So next month. So really watching the US and the UK to see what happens there, because we'll follow suit very quickly, or that'll give our governor a license to also drop. So and the banks are saying, potentially another drop later this year. So we could see 2 drops, whether it comes to 0.5% or 0.75%. We'll take it, because that's just profit that's I'm paying to the bank and interest at the moment. Again, watch your tenant. You talk about tenant risks. I do 2 broad things when I'm looking at prospective tenants. I have a conversation with them. What do you do? Where you're coming from in terms of, where were you before? I understand the job that they do, the car that they're driving. So if I once had a prospective tenant arrive in his Porsche to come and rent a 1-bedroom apartment, and I was like, yo, this just doesn't make sense. So it's just understanding that, like, because ultimately, property and managing either tenants or guests, we're in the people business. So let's understand what this relationship is going to be, right? Is going to look like, right? And that's so important, because after I've done I do TPN credit checks, right? And if everything is okay there, I now have to work or have a relationship, a professional relationship, but it's a relationship with this tenant for the next 12, 24, 36 months. And you don't want a tenant that, you don't have a relationship that is difficult, even though the tenant pays every month, right? But there could be, so it's a people's business, and you got to make sure. I try to make sure that we bring the right type of tenant in, and we can relate to each other, etc. And that model of having that engagement supported, it's almost secondary by the TPN credit score, credit check, has really been underpinned, I think, my success with my tenants over the last years.
Wonderful. I think there's some great nuggets of information there, Miguel. Thank you for that. That's awesome. And yes, I can see Robin chomping at the bit over there. He's Robin, we're going to see you live at the InvestorCon, so you'll have the opportunity to run through overtime as much as you can over there. To our audience, also, just if you got questions, just pop them into the Q&A box, and then we'll deal with them a bit later. But Robin, so let's talk about keeping up with sort of performance of returns, and more importantly, lessons learned. So can you maybe share a specific investment experience where you faced challenges, and what lessons did you learn from that? What action did you take when you got those challenges?
So I think the lessons learned are, and we always say that, the absence of profits, the absence of, well, to gain success, to gain profits, it's not the absence of our challenges, it's our ability to work with them and overcome them, because money goes where the solution is provided. We know that. If we can solve a problem that other people can't, we're going to have the choice of the bookings and of the money that comes in. And there are a couple of ones, and I mentioned a bit about the automation. We want to make sure that in the Airbnb, our guests can check in without us having to be there. And one of the strategies that we find is very successful is on booking.com, for example. It's such a massive platform. There are very few people who have set up their automations such that if someone books on the same day they want to check in, it's not available. They have to shut down their booking because they don't have that automation in place. So if someone wants to book in on that day, and even as late as, let's say, 6 o'clock that evening, and they want to check in at 8 o'clock that same evening, like you might in a hotel, I can do that. I can handle it because it's all automated. All the messaging, all the communication, all the access codes, that really just happens. And therefore, I dominate in my area on those last-minute bookings, if that's the case. So there's an example of a problem that we turned into a great solution. And I think talking about a problem that's going to come down the line for us here in South Africa is that hosts are not shifting to digital access codes for entry. In other words, we're still using keys, and I'm waiting for the day where our some not so good person is going to realize, I just have to book an Airbnb. I'm going to get the keys. I'm going to go to the locksmith, duplicate the key, come back, have a great stay, check out, and then I'm going to watch their calendar and see when they have vacancy And now I've got the key. There's no alarm. I'm going to go in, open the door. The neighbor knows people come in and go out the whole time, so they're not going to be alerted. And I'm going to clean the place out, and no one's going to know any better, because we're not using smart locks that are linked to Wi-Fi, that have codes specific to our guest period of stay. So I'm big on all that side of automation and tech. And all these kinds of things are what differentiates, I think, a lot about what I do and I teach and what my courses share with just the average person out there. I don't want average returns. And I think all three of us have said here that what we're wanting is we want to maximize our profits, and we want to increase our cash flow. And that means we need to be booked first. We need to know that we're going to have return guests. We're going to have great reviews. All of these kinds of things differentiate ourselves from someone else. And that's why we're here, because we're making money out of it. And that's why we want to share it with everyone else.
That's wonderful. Listen, I really think, guys, this is some fantastic, really golden nuggets here. I'm getting excited. I can't wait until InvestorCon, guys. And you've got to get your ass there. If you want to get into real estate, guys, yeah, we've got the best minds that are going to be there. So please, guys, come along to the event. It's going to be a networking thing of note. You're going to meet Witness. You're going to meet Robin. You're going to meet Miguel. You're going to meet these guys that are doing it, that you can follow and that you can learn from and apply. So Witness, maybe you tell us some of your lessons learned, where you had specific challenges and the lessons, all the things that you applied to deal with those challenges and what you learned from that experience too.
Yeah, no, awesome insights there, Robin. Thank you so much, Neil. I think, understanding that you could go wrong in property is important. Ever heard that saying that get into property, you'll never go wrong? That's wrong. You can go wrong in property. You can get into the wrong deal and basically mess up your entire portfolio. So what I realized over time, the reason I ended up saying I actually realized I don't like the day-to-day management of property for me, is the fact that when we got into with our multi-lets, we realized that we were not managing our water and utilities, and that basically could kill an entire business, right? So with one property where we had two, for some odd reason, we did not get the water right with that property. We were owing the municipality so much. We just basically renovated the property, raised the value, and sold the property. Right, sold it off to another investor who would be able to solve the challenges that we're experiencing in that property. So for me, I think if you find yourself in a position where you are not able to monetize the property as much as you can, raise the value and get rid of the property.
Okay, that's good advice, because what I'm hearing all the time, it's action, 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 guys. Don't sit back and just do nothing and take it that nothing can be done. So I think definitely great advice there, Witness. Wonderful. And on your side, Miguel, maybe you can share exactly the same in terms of, the challenges, what you did and some of the lessons you also learned from that.
Yeah. I think as maybe a broad comment, and I spoke about it early on, educating oneself. I think, I sat on the ring side of Airbnb and short-term rentals. I sat on the side of it and watching other people doing it, and not quite understanding it, seeing the highs, but also seeing the lows, and that scared me off. And I think this applies to whether it's Airbnb, rentals, student accommodation. We look at this and we hear about NSFAS and the issues of NSFAS and student accommodation. We hear about the EFF marches and what that does to student accommodation and etc. We student marches, etc. Buy to let and squatters and evictions, and these things happen, but there are ways to significantly reduce the risk that they pose to our properties, right? And the difference between being fully exposed to that, as opposed to either limiting at risk significantly or reducing it altogether, is getting the right knowledge. And again, the right knowledge might be a specialist, or it actually might be getting into a group of other investors or landlords or in the same space and saying, how are you doing what you're doing? Let's start that let's start that collaboration. So on the back of that, I've belonged to several masterminds along the way. I belong to a group of 200 Johannesburg Airbnb hosts at the moment, which I set up. And I set that up really to get a sense for where the market was earlier this year, and whether it was was my performance bad, or was the market performing bad, and therefore what could I do about it? So I really surround myself with experts. With InvestorCon coming up 16th, 17th of July, when Debbie approached me, with the concept of putting it together, the idea was what was really is that there are three really popular investment strategies in South Africa: the buy-to-let rentals, multi-lets, then student accommodation, very very topical, and then of course Airbnb and short-term rentals. And we've split the InvestorCon into those three streams. And before the three of us built our diversified strategies, we started with one thing. We started with an approach, and we said, this particular strategy, mine was buy-to-let. I had so much time, I had access to financing with my payslip. Okay, I'm going to go the buy-to-let route. And so we have a stream for that, for those wanting to start and to grow, definitely to grow. And that's really the approach. Go and immerse yourself in 2 evenings. We've got 4 hours of master classes each evening, 4 different sessions. And the sessions are held by people who are doing it. And not just people who are doing it, people who are able to share what they're doing it really well. So come and spend time with the experts. There'll be 4 or 5 experts every evening in each of those 2 evenings. And of course, each stream is hosted by an industry expert. Robin is hosting the Airbnb short-term rental stream, so he'll be there for the 2 evenings. And then we've got Andrew Walker. We all know Andrew Walker, who's hosting the buy-to-let stream. And then Jaco Grobler hosting the student accommodation stream. So really, in 2 nights, you're really going to get access to the key questions. We're not going to give you the theory. We're not going to give you the economics. There are definitely places one can go and get there, and that's really interesting. But the idea is that the attendees leave InvestorCon with golden nuggets that they can impact in their portfolios the next day. So really looking forward. It is the largest gathering of property investors ever in South Africa. So looking forward to it.
Great. And once again, I encourage everybody to do that. I see it's a very cheap round in terms of questions. And also, I like the word golden nuggets, because I remember I interviewed a South African business billionaire, Yanni Maton. And I said, what tips can you give investors? And he said to me, tips are for waiters. I can give you advice. So very interesting. He said there's no such thing as tips, because it's tips are just tips, and that's exactly what it is. So I think it's all golden nuggets. It's utilizing information, but most important, then putting them into action. I can't believe where the time's gone. There's one question, we're going to deal with it very quickly. It's from Yaku, who's also, and it says there, and it's actually aimed at you, Witness. It says, love multi-lets. We have property prosperity enterprises often invest in implies, and where a person goes to rezone. Can you answer that question quickly?
I couldn't hear the full question because the sound went off a bit there,
Okay,
Neil. Can you
breaking up there, Witness?
mind repeating the question?
Just frozen. I'm not quite sure. Okay, you try again. So the question is, it's actually in the Q&A box there, but it's love multi-lets, and can you elaborate to the audience on what the zoning implies and where a person goes to rezone? Just want to deal with that. Then I'm going to give each one of you your final wrap. Because can you believe it, guys? It's almost 1 o'clock. So Witness, if you can maybe just deal with this quickly, and then maybe you can give us your final wrap as well on top of that, and then I'll give the same opportunity both to Robin and Miguel as well.
Yeah.
I see
So
you frozen again, Witness. Not quite sure. You've got a nice pose over there, looking very,
I think
very
I'm good. I think there's something wrong with.
Okay, so what I'm going to do.
Can you hear me,
Neil? I think, Neil, it's your side, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's Neil's side as well, because his internet looks like it's a bit down. But I did hear the question, and I will proceed to answer it. Maybe you can find me answering it. So When it comes to multi-let, right, there is a prescribed number of units that you can have on a specific property like Res 1. The best person to speak to, depending on the area where you're operating, is your town planner. So your town planner will tell
You're
you
back again.
how many units you can have in a residential yard. Depending on the number of square meters that yard is, they'll tell you the prescribed number of units that you can develop on that specific property. So when we started, the reason why we went exactly for the house is because ideally, the municipality already recognizes that house as one house on the property, right? So we actually took, we'll say we took advantage of regulation when it comes to that. But over time, we realized that if you want to sell the property, you must actually get it rezoned so that you can able to get the value of the property when you are selling it. Yeah, and then maybe my last round would be follow regulation, do what's right. Because if you want to refinance the property, it's difficult to refinance a property that's not uh, that's not uh, that's not in line with what the municipality says about that specific area. So it's important to ensure that your property does not break any laws and your property follows regulation, right? So get the right team in place, get yourself a proper architect, get yourself a town planner, and anyone else that knows the regulation of the municipality so that you can develop a property that you'll be able to refinance or sell later. Because if that's not there, you won't be able to refinance the property and the bank will not be able to finance the property. We had one property that we recently sold. It wasn't zoned correctly, and we had to look for a cash buyer for that property. So something that would have taken less than 3 months to sell took me almost 6 months to sell it because that property we're basically looking for someone who's going to give us 2.5 million cash. And there aren't many people that would be willing to do that in a short space of time. So get the regulations right.
Great. So just give us your quick 30-second final wrap there, Witness, and then I'll just go around to Robin and then lastly to Miguel. Just your final thoughts, your parting shots to the audience.
Okay, my parting shots. If you guys are coming to the investor conference on the 16th and 17th of July, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And remember, property is a long-term game. Although you can be able to realize some value in the short term, play the strategy in the long term and build wealth. From me to you, it's more than just money. I'll see you on the 16th.
Awesome. Thanks, Witness. Mgaka. Okay, he's also, I love the title of your book, by the way. It's more than just about money. It's wonderful. I think you must buy that book, everybody. It's more than just about money. Hopefully you're going to have that book for sale also at the InvestorCon as well. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people interested. So Robin, just give us your final thoughts, your final parting shots also to the audience before we go. Can you believe the time ran out? We didn't even get to your innards of your strategy. So we'll get it at InvestorCon.
Yeah, so Neil, I think, when I'm sitting there looking at whether property to buy, a course, educational course, should I invest in that, or whether it's worth spending money on a ticket to come to InvestorCon, I'm always looking at how much will this make me, not how much is it going to cost me. And when I realized that a course or a strategy could start generating a lot more cash flow, that's something I've got to take into account. Coming to a workshop or to the InvestorCon, and that opens up a strategy that you didn't know that could then lead into a whole new avenue for someone. That's something which for me brings in a whole new a mindset, and then suddenly makes it worthwhile. And I think that's what I leave whenever I think about, should I or shouldn't I? It's, well, is this going to open up a new strategy for me and make me more money than actually what I put down? And I think that's the key to successful property investing.
Wonderful. I think a nice way to finish. And final word from you there, Miguel. You got the last say by the looks of things.
Golden nuggets and not the ones from KFC is really what I want to talk about, end off with, right? So, at InvestorCon, I really had the opportunity to pull together some fantastic speakers. As I said, people who are doing it, people who have the experience, and they're willing to share it. The Witness is going to be there, Robin's going to be there, and they're going to, and the challenge I've put to both Robin and Witness and the speakers is to leave 3 golden nuggets. I'm going to use that term, and each of the presentation that the each of their presentations and their workshops that attendees can take away. And what you do, what I take from that is that sometimes you just have to go and get one takeout in a sitting, in a workshop, in a masterclass that will just change your thinking about something, solve a problem, or just take you in a whole different direction. And I'm just really, I'm expecting that InvestorCon next month is going to be full of golden nuggets. I've challenged the speakers to come to the party with us, and I'm looking forward to, as well as I know, all the speakers and really handpick them. I'm looking forward to putting those golden nuggets for myself, because learning is a continuous process.
Wonderful. Miguel Martins, Robin Booth, and of course, Witness and Ndaka, thank you very much. I think it was such an insightful discussion. I'm really looking forward to InvestorCon. And as you say, it's a whole, I mean, it's a smorgasbord of investments, starting on the evening, with looking at different municipalities, then InvestorCon, then the Reside Summit, and then ending off in RE-Tech on the Friday, which I will be personally running on that particular day. So join us also for PropTech, and we must get your automation thing involved there, Robin. So certainly we want to learn from that. So thank you. You've been a wonderful panel. Just before we close, just a reminder, audience, of our webinar next week. And Robin, you're joining us again next week, which is great. It's for next Thursday, 4th of July. It's 12 o'clock. We're on the topic, Property Rockstars Reveal Their Investment Success Secrets. And it's another investor insightful and inspirational webinar. It's also a prelude to the 5th annual Investor of the Year Awards. So we're also going to have our three previous winners who will be there on the webinar next Thursday. So please come and join us to register. There is a link which will be in the box, the chat box over there. And so we'd love to see you all there. I'm just going to drop that in now so that everybody can see that they've got to attend. And once again, you're also going to get more golden nuggets over there too. So reminder, you're getting a 50% off at the Reside Summit. So it's a great opportunity to spend some time with Witness and with Robin and with Miguel, and really to get these strategies. To our audience, to you today, we thank you for your active participation, your engagement throughout this. We also, I think, hopefully you got some knowledge, but you'll act on this, very important. We learned it's not just about getting knowledge, it's about acting. And I encourage you all to reach out to any one of our panelists here. Please let us know. Until next time, you just stay informed, proactive. May your ventures in the world of real estate be fruitful and filling. And to our panel, and on behalf of our panel, this is Neil Peterson of Real Estate Investor, along with the InvestorCon panelists. We'll see you all there. Signing out. Take care and goodbye until next week. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.